It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 25, looking at the players of Euro 2024. This episode is looking at the players of Scotland. Here we go. Hello and welcome again to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin, and we continue Series 25 on the groups and players of the 2024 Euro Cup. This episode covers Scotland's players. This is actually part 2 of the Players Mediacast, where we look at the selections. In part 1, we made a list of the candidates and introduced them and their likelihood of making the squad. There's a link to part 1 in the show notes. And now that the final rosters have been released, it's time for us to look at who was selected. So this MediaCast will be divided into 3 sections. In section 1, we look over the list that we compiled in part 1 and see who made it and who didn't. In section 2, we summarize surprise selections or non-selections, and we review the injuries. And in section 3, we revisit the predictions of starters that we did in part 1 in light of the warm-up games to see if we would make any changes. Let's begin then. Okay, we go back to the list that we had. I'm actually going to get rid of these highlights here. We will come back to those. Those were highlights from the predictions, which we'll do in section 3 here. Okay, so for manager, we have Steve Clark, and there was no change to the manager situation, so we will say he successfully made the squad. Let's look at our goalkeepers. We had a definite candidate in Angus Gunn, and he did make the squad. We had 2 likely candidates, Xander Clark and Liam Kelly. Both of those made the squad. And we had a possible candidate in Craig Gordon, 41-year-old Craig Gordon, who had actually come back from injury and played in the March 2024 games there. He was selected for the preliminary squad, but did not make the final squad. And then we had possible candidate Robbie McCrory, not selected even for the preliminary squad, which, by the way, was a 28, or it started with a 30-man preliminary squad for Scotland. I just want to check on that to make sure. Actually, a 28-man preliminary squad, but some players did come and go because of injuries there. Nevertheless, he didn't make it, and nor did John McLaughlin or David Marshall, who we had as off the squad. Okay, so those are the 3 goalkeepers. We thought there might be 4 because they had brought some forward to warm-up games, but no, just the 3. On to central defence, we had 3 definite candidates in Jack Henry, Ryan Porteous, and Kieran Tierney. All 3 of those selected. We had 2 likely candidates, Liam Cooper and Scott McKenna, both of those also selected. And we also had Grant Hanley as a possible candidate, but kind of an injury doubt. However, he has been selected for the squad. The other possible candidate was Harry Sutar, and he was not selected. We had a couple of players that seemed to be off the squad, Declan Gallagher and Dominic Hyam. Neither of those selected, as we expected. Okay, over to left back, and we had Andrew Robertson, the captain of the team, who was a definite candidate and was selected. We had Greg Taylor, a possible candidate, and he too was selected. But our possible but unlikely candidate, Josh Doig, was not selected. On the right side, we had two players who were injury risks and doubts to various degrees. Anyway, neither Nathan Patterson, our definite candidate, nor Aaron Hickey, our likely candidate, were selected. And those definite and likely were on the basis of them being fit, but we knew that the injuries were a factor lowering their chances. So big trouble for there on the right side, but they do have the possible candidate, Anthony Ralston, who was selected. Possible but unlikely, Max Johnson, and off the squad, Stephen O'Donnell. Neither of those were selected even for the preliminary squad. On to the midfield, and we look at defensive midfielders. We had Jack Ryan as a possible candidate, even without the injury concern, but there was an injury doubt that probably lowered his likelihood, but he was selected, Ryan Jack. And then Ross McCrory, also a surprise. We had him as seemingly off the squad, but he was selected for the final squad. In the central midfield, we have Scott McTominay and Billy Gilmore, both of those definite candidates, and both were selected. Our likely candidate too, Callum McGregor, was selected. Possible but unlikely, Elliot Anderson. A couple of reasons why he was unlikely. Both back injury was a concern, and whether he was going to commit himself to Scotland rather than England. He's eligible for both, and that remains up in the air. He was not selected for the squad, so we do know he hasn't committed himself to Scotland. And then two players who were off the squad, David Turnbull and John Fleck. Neither were they selected. On to right midfield and right midfielders. A bit of a surprise here. We have James Forrest, who we had as seemingly off the squad, being selected. In the left attacking end of the field, we had three definite candidates, Ryan Christie, Stuart Armstrong, and Kenny McLean. And all three of them were selected for the squad. Seemingly off the squad, Ryan Fraser was not selected. And we do have a new candidate here. It is Lewis Morgan. Lewis Morgan, coded as a left winger and brought into the squad. On the right side, we had John McGinn as a definite candidate. He was the only one on the right attacking side, and he was selected. On to, sorry, that shouldn't be forwards. Attacking midfielders there. We had Lewis Ferguson, who was an injury doubt, and he was not selected for the squad. We had him as a likely candidate, so a bit of a loss there. And among the forwards, probably the biggest news of all, we had Lyndon Dykes as a definite candidate with no injury tag on him, but it turns out he is injured and was not selected for the final squad, just the preliminary squad there. And he withdrew due to that injury. That left us with our three possible candidates, only at the possible level, and Che Adams and Lawrence Shankland were selected, but Jacob Brown was not. We also had the possible but unlikely Kevin Nisbet, who was not selected, but we do have a new candidate here too, and it is Tommy Conway. Tommy Conway. So we'll give a little biographical information on them in the next section, but that is the selections for the team. And we move on and we'll talk about a review of the surprises here. So where am I in my list? Okay, let's go to notable non-selections. And we have Lyndon Dykes, probably the biggest surprise because we didn't have him keyed as an injury doubt. So Lyndon Dykes, Lyndon Dykes not selected for the squad. Just for the preliminary squad. Surprise inclusions. Grant Hanley had been injured for large chunks of the season, but he had recovered. Not really a surprise because we thought he might return to the team if he was fit. But anyway, good to have him. He hadn't been there for most of the period that we looked at. Ross McCrory is a defensive midfielder who we had as a off the team candidate, but he was selected. And then, so we'll give a little more information on him because we didn't talk about them much. Ross McCrory has no caps for the national team. He's 26 years old and he plays for Bristol City in England, was with Aberdeen before that. So, yes, just brought up to the squad here. He's actually kind of been around for a while because he appeared in October 2020. But he hadn't been called up since 2020, so coming back after a long time. James Forrest is with Celtic in Scotland since 2010. He was with Scotland from 2011 to 21, well, that'll be longer now, with 38 caps and 5 goals. And he was part of Euro 2020, but he hadn't appeared for the national team since then. But now now he is called up again for a tournament. Our two new players, Morgan Lewis is 27 years old. He actually got a couple of caps back in 2018 and then played in a warm-up game for his third cap. Morgan Lewis is with Scotland since 2018 then. I was going to say his club. His club is New York Red Bulls in USA, and he was with Inter Miami before that, and Celtic prior to that. So Lewis Morgan, a left winger, called up. Also Tommy Conway, he is 21 years old. He hadn't played for the national team, but did play in one of the warm-up games, and he's with Bristol City in England also, just like Ross McCrory. And Tommy Conway then getting the call up. An update on injuries then. So we have recovered from injury is Grant Hanley, and he is joining the team. I'll keep his name in green to show that. And Ryan Jack, he was in injury doubt, but was recovered enough to be selected for the team. However, we have a number of players dropped due to injury. Two right backs, Nathan Patterson and Aaron Hickey. So we're going to take a look at the warm-up games to see how they handled that problem. We also have left midfielder Stuart Armstrong. I should say Nathan Patterson was a definite candidate, Aaron Hickey a likely candidate. Stuart Armstrong was a definite candidate, and his hamstring injury apparently preventing his selection. And we had attacking midfielder Lewis Ferguson as a likely candidate, who also had a ligament injury. We knew he wouldn't be back. And Lyndon Dykes finally added to the list, put on the preliminary squad, I'm sure in hopes of his recovery, but not there. Okay, and yes, Grant Hanley and Jack Ryan were just possible candidates there. All right, let's go back over our predicted starters list and see if we have any changes. So Steve Clark, of course, we predicted, but in this section, I'll talk about the warm-up games, a combination of regular starters and some of the bench players or new players given field time here. Particularly forward Shankland was given 2 starts in the absence of Dykes. So we will look at that again when we get to forwards. For goalkeepers, we had predicted Angus Gunn. In the warm-up games, he started one of them. And Xander Clark started the other one. That did throw a bit of a curveball to us because we had thought Liam Kelly was going to be the first backup keeper, but Xander Clark starting one of those warm-up games puts a bit of doubt into that. Nevertheless, we're still confident that Angus Gunn will be the starting goalkeeper. In central defence, we had predicted, the formation of a three-man defence, and actually in the two warm-up games, they had one two-man defence and one three-man defence. So, but I still think they'll go with a three-man defence. We had predicted what had been basically happening all along: Jack Hendry in middle, Kieran Tierney on the left, and Ryan Porteous on the right. However, Grant Hanley started both of those games. So now we think he's resuming his position. He had that before he was out injured for most of the period. So we're gonna remove Jack Hendry as our predicted starter and insert Grant Hanley there as the starter. Left back position, nothing has changed there. We predicted Andrew Robertson and are still confident about that. He started both warm-up games. The right back position, we were very anxious to see how they would manage this, and given Patterson and Hickey's absence. Well, in the first game, it was defensive midfielder Ross McCrory on that side, and in the second game, right back Anthony Ralston. However, we're not confident enough to say that that's what they'll go with in the cup, so we're still not able to predict a starter in the right back position. Okay, moving upfield to midfielders. The situation there had been McTominay, Gilmore, and McGregor basically rotating starts. We had nominated McTominay and Gilmore as starters, our two definite candidates. What ended up happening was McTominay did not appear on the field in the warm-ups. I think he wasn't even on the bench for the first one, and he was just on the bench for the second one. Nevertheless, we remain confident that he will be a starter. Gilmore started both games there, one alongside McLean, who we have as a left attacker, and one alongside McGregor. And so we will keep with Gilmore on that one. For left attacking players, we thought we had highlighted Ryan Christie in green, and afterwards I thought maybe we should have put him in blue as a bit doubtful because I wasn't fully confident he'd be a starter. Anyway, he did start both of the warm-up games, but he started on the right side. So a little strange going on with the attacking end of the pitch. You'll hear the second half of that soon. But maybe I will claim to be clever and keep Ryan Christie as a confident or a starter that we're confident in. And over on the right side, we had John McGinn. He started one of the games, but as a left attacker, and the other game was started by right midfielder Forrest. Forrest, who was a surprise selection, so maybe they were giving him just a little field time there. So really the only surprising part is that Christie and McGinn switched sides. Forrest, who's a right midfielder, also playing on the left. So it's a bit odd that they didn't start on the kind of designated sides. Okay, up to the forward line. Well, we had predicted, no, we hadn't been confident enough in Lyndon Dykes to predict him. Again, on reflection, I probably would have put him in blue as maybe the most likely starter. But we are taken by surprise that Lawrence Shanklin got both starts in the warm-up games. We probably thought Che Adams was the most likely backup, and perhaps he is. and they're just giving Lawrence Shankland some field time. So we're not really sure what it means that Shankland started both, though. It could mean that he is being eyed as a starter in the tournament. Anyway, that brings us to the end. We would like to thank Mike Kripak, Make Sound Music, and Pixabay for the wonderful background music called Dance 90s accompanying this mediacast.